We may have heard that alongside the practice of meditation, we are advised to interest ourselves in the philosophy of non-duality and to make time to study and reflect upon it. At this point, we might say, the deeper truth necessarily lies beyond what can be fitted into words and thoughts. So how can we think about what is beyond thought? Why should we even try? It's certainly true that our mind and thoughts are always occupied with qualities and quantities and differences and connections, while ultimate reality cannot be framed by time or space or characteristics that belong to some things and not others. All the great wisdom traditions have advised that it is impossible to form an image or an idea of the supreme reality. This does seem to imply that it would be fruitless to think about the truth that transcends thought, and perhaps unwise even to try. And yet, how can we not think about what is really real? The will to know is intrinsic to our human nature, the curiosity of children, the investigations of scholars and researchers, the reflections prompted by the approaching end of our lives, are all expressions of the fundamental human urge to know. So how can we not be led to think about the ultimate source and support of everything we experience? Unless that is known, all other knowledge is tentative and incomplete. The non-dual teachings fully acknowledge the validity of both these apparently incompatible conclusions. Ultimate truth is beyond thoughts and words. Yet truth can be known, not through words and thoughts, but by uncovering the ground of being on which all experience occurs. And progress on the path to that discovery depends on us making the right use of our capacity for rational thinking and creative imagination. True knowledge has to be uncovered from within. It cannot be injected by any power from outside. In fact, we can say that the whole path is a process of enquiry, called in Sanskrit Vichara. It's an inquiry into the truths of our own being and all being. All the other practices, including meditation, are ways of pursuing this end. This Vichara, this inquiry, is essential because the main challenge on the path, what stands between us and the lasting fulfillment of inner illumination, is what might be called a kind of not knowing. It is a sort of ignorance, to use that word in a completely non-judgmental sense. Sometimes the human condition at the beginning of our inner development is described as somehow at fault or exiled or caught in cycles of limitation. There are some insights on these ways of seeing. The non-dual view is simply that there is something essential that we do not yet know, which we have come into the world to discover, so to say. It follows that if the basic problem is not knowing, then the solution is knowledge. In fact, only knowledge can overcome ignorance. So knowledge is the goal. And the way to the goal of knowledge is a life of inquiry, the practice of Vichara. There are two aspects to our not knowing. One is that we do not know our own true nature, our true self. Our I is somehow hidden from us. When it is fully known, our self shall be revealed as not different in essence from the universal self of all beings, and all our incompleteness, all insecurities shall be resolved forever. The second aspect is that as well as not knowing our true self, we have a mistaken idea that we are something we are not. We have the compelling sense that we are the body and mind and no more, and that the limits and travails of the mind are our own. In truth, the mind-body is what we experience, and what we experience is not what we are in our true nature. Our true self is that which reveals the experiences and ever abides in its own perfection, self-luminous and self-sufficient. In a previous session like this, we thought about how the compelling sense of being identified with the mind comes about. True self-knowledge will reveal that this was always a misapprehension, never the truth of our real nature. Our task then is to resolve not knowing by knowledge, that is, to overcome the impression that we are the body, mind, and no more, and to open up the way to a realization of our true self. In this, all our inner faculties, our reason, our attention, imagination, memory, our focused emotions, are to be fully engaged in the life of inquiry, and that is, initially, an inquiry into what we are not. This is also a way of discovering what ultimate reality is not. It will become apparent that our own self and the Supreme Being is not anything finite or limited in any way. As this truth becomes clearer, so too will the positive implication that our real self is beyond limitations and imperfections and is already present as the ground of our experience. As this certainty awakens, a new light begins to illuminate our inner world and the way ahead. From what we have said so far, it's clear that although the mind has a finite range, it is far from valueless. Indeed, the human mind is supremely valuable. Thinkers like Socrates are considered especially wise because they showed that by recognizing the limitations of the mind, we are beginning to take our stand on what transcends the mind. Many authentic wisdom traditions teach that we can make inner progress through practices such as self-restraint and showing goodwill to other people, even when their views and interests seem to conflict with our own. But the non-dual teachings go further, for in this tradition, such practices are based on the conviction that in our true nature we are more than our individual body and mind. When consciously applied, these forms of self-restraint lead beyond the consolations of Stoicism to the joys of inner sovereignty. So far we have been led to the logical conclusion or intuitive feeling that we're more than the mind. Can the teachings go further than elucidating what we're not and point positively to the truth of our own being, the reality in all? The nature of the self cannot be expressed in words, but the teachings can reassure us that the truth is there to be found and indicate the direction in which it is to be sought. There is a reality beyond appearances that is not bound by any limitations or insecurity. And this reality is not distant from us. It is the essence of our life and consciousness, and we can approach it with all our heart and mind. Let us note that the non-dual philosophy does not try to prove this intellectually. Reason can only establish whether one thing logically follows from another. Study of the philosophy will show that its conclusions are indeed reasonable, but their truth can only be established by direct experience. The teachings are given to us on the authority of those who have made the great discovery, and they are offered as encouragement and guidance for our own search and inquiry, if we choose to pursue them. How then can we progress our own inquiry into the truth at the core of our being, where all apparent divisions are resolved? In other fields of study, progress is measured in the accumulation of facts and problem-solving skills. The aim of our metaphysical Vichara is to bring about an inner change, such that all our thoughts and feelings tend to flow naturally in the direction of non-duality and self-revelation. Success in this does not depend on special mental gifts. It means allowing the new influence to permeate our whole mind, whatever our personal mental makeup may be. So our progressive Vichara means first listening to or reading about the teachings from a reliable source with an open mind, really listening without preconceptions is itself an art which takes practice. And then our task is to make the essential ideas our own, to find our way of expressing them to ourselves in our own words, using our own imagination. The teachings serve as keys through which we can uncover deeper aspects of our own nature. Let us be sure that we can do this. We have the ability, for example, to find our way of expressing and visualizing the truth that little waves are really the great ocean, or that there is a light within that depends on no other light or any other insight from the teachings that captures our attention. It is for each of us to notice where our own ways of thinking encounter questions, then to reflect on how non-duality bridges or resolves the gaps between appearances and reality. Thus, we use our own ways of thinking and seeing to absorb the non-dual principles. As we do, we find the course of our thoughts and cares assuming the new direction. This is true understanding. The vision of non-duality becomes the ground, so to say, on which we take our mental stand. A question that has challenged many minds down the ages is how a supreme power or being that transcends space and time might be somehow concerned with our human situation, and how we might draw support and comfort from one so far beyond the adequacy of our thoughts and feelings. One of the great conclusions of the non-dual teachings is that this gap, this difficulty, appears only from a certain point of view, and we can choose to take our stand on another point of view. We said before that all practices, including meditation, are means of pursuing our inquiry. The meditation time is special, and when it is a part of our life of Vichara, it means that we can approach the meditation with our whole mind balanced, relaxed, focused, and engaged in what is of supreme value and significance to us.